Hey guys, so this is part 2 to my review for the first 5 chapters of Personal Demons by Lisa DesRoches. Part 1, the reason I need to do a part 2 is because my phone, which is where I film my videos on, it cuts out at around the 33-minute mark, somewhere between 33 and 34 minutes. And that's why I was kind of rushing through the chapters as well. Next time I'll just go at a much slower pace, and if that means I need to do 2 parts, then that's what I'll do. But I feel that it would be a disrespectful way to end without giving my overall thoughts of the first 5 chapters, which is something I really want to get into. Now, overall, I did say this at the beginning of my review, but overall, Lisa DesRoches' writing style, I don't like that it's written in first person. I don't like the fact that we have to read Luke's perspective of something that's going on with him and Franny, and then we have to read Franny's perspective of the exact same thing, because we're getting the exact same story just from 2 different perspectives, written one after the other. I don't like this. I'm not a fan of this at all, and my friend is not a fan of it either, so big shout out again to my friend. Excuse me. So sorry for all the coughing and clearing up my throat. The only thing that really makes it work for me with Franny's perspective, because the way I would have done this would have been completely different to the way, bless her, that Lisa DesRoches does it, but that's just me. But the way I would have done it is I would have completely cut Franny's side of things. That's what I would have done. I know that there are other people, excuse me just a moment. Okay, that was a massive cough there, so I apologize for pausing. But you didn't need to see that. I know there are other, readers or writers that probably would have, if you had to choose, cut Luke's side of the story and kept Franny's. And I can appreciate that because there are a lot of readers out there. Well, sidebar. There are writers who write for their readers, and then there are writers who write in spite of their readers. And I love writing. I've been writing books and putting them up on fanfic, but also Fiction Press, because one thing I didn't like about fanfic.com, or .net, is that you have to write about you need to write your story based on the canon, the original works of the movie or the TV show or the book series, where I like writing my own stuff. So Fiction Press, and I'm not affiliated with them, they're not sponsoring me, but I will give them both shout outs. Fanfic.net, fictionpress.net, they're both amazing. I have written quite a few books for both of them. So I love writing. But for me, I take both sides. So I will write with the audience in mind, but at the same time, if I have come to a point where I need to decide which way a story is going to go, or what I'm going to do in a certain scene, or how a chapter is going to play out, and the 2 deciding factors are, do I give my reading audience what they want, or do I go with the way I want to write it? I'm going to go with the way I want to write it, because for me, I want to stick to the vision that I have, as opposed to, because I'm not writing for the masses, and I've never done that. I've never taken a book and written it because I want others to read it. If they do, that's an amazing bonus. I love reading, and I think that not enough people, this is just my view, not enough people out there read anymore. And so if anyone were to read a copy of any of the books that I put up on Fiction Press or fanfic.net, wonderful, if it gets them into reading, that's amazing. But I never once wrote for others. I wrote for myself. Actually, that's not true. The very first book that I wrote for others. And then I realized how much I should not be writing for others and how I should just be writing for myself. And that's what I did from then on. So for me personally, to get back to my point, I would cut out the Franny perspective, because I am all about fantasy worlds, fantasy novels, all that kind of stuff. And so to just have it from Luke's perspective, I think it would be a much better read for me. And again, I've only read 5 chapters, but this is where I'm at so far. I would prefer to see that. And plus, as I said in my intro, I am not about reading books that are about Humanlandia. And if you missed my overview, excuse me, my intro, that I did with my goal setting and books I'm going to read this year, my definition of humanlandia is any book that is a fantasy novel, any novel that's a fantasy novel that has human aspects to it. And so then we have high humanlandia fiction, medium humanlandia fiction, and low humanlandia fiction. And this book would probably be a medium to high humanlandia fantasy book, because the human elements in this are probably about, in the first 5 chapters, I'd say probably be about 80%. It's set at a high school. They're after a human. There are all the other characters outside of Luke and Gabe, and King Lucifer, I guess, are human. So it's a very human book to read. And what I love about Harry Potter, and I'll hold up The Prisoner of Azkaban, because I've always got some kind of Harry Potter near me. What I love about Harry Potter is, and I even as a child, when I couldn't always formulate the right words to use, the shall we say, the in words for readers and writers, like canon, which anyway, canon. Anyway, let's let that go. I would say I love reading, when I was younger and reading it for the first time, I would say I love the Harry Potter series once Harry gets to school. And spoiler alert, in case you haven't read the final Harry Potter book, minor spoiler alert in case you haven't read the final Harry Potter book, 3/4 of the book is not spent at school, and that really annoys me. So where with this one, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, they might spend a chapter, maybe 2, at home, and the rest of the time they're at school. And it is a magical world with magical rules, and magic leads the way, and it's not a human story. There are human elements throughout the school, granted, even though I am reviewing this book and not this one. I do want to make my point on humanlandia. There are human elements in the book, like love interests and other things like that, that's very human, but the majority of that book is set in a magical world where it's all about magic. So where if I were to look at, I'm just going to pause so I can grab this book. Okay, if I were to look at this book, which I love, I'm sorry about the mirror imagery, by the way. It's just my phone. I've tried to fix the settings many times and it just doesn't want to work. But this book is Charmed Trickery Treat. I love the Charmed TV series. I've loved it since I first watched it. And so there were authors that decided to put out Charmed novels. Yay! So much fun to read. What I don't like about Charmed, and again, I'm just making my point about humanlandia aspects, is when the creators of Charmed were talking and doing interviews, the original Charmed, original Charmed, Paige, Phoebe, Piper, not the new Charmed 2.0, which is debatable at best of how good that is. But anyway, moving on. Is that the creators will say, this is not a show about witches. This is a show about sisters who just happen to be witches. And I don't like that. I personally, and that's fine, that's how they did it, and that's, what they said, and everyone can have their own opinion. But for me personally, I would not have gone there in the interview. I would have said, yeah, it's a show about witches. Absolutely. I would say it's a show about witches who happen to be sisters. Because to me, Charmed is not a heavy humanlandia show. No. Yes, there are humanlandia things that will come into play here and there. There are relationships, there are friendships with other humans that they have, but the majority of the show is all about the magic and the magical world and them being witches and fighting demons. And so that to me has next to no humanlandia stuff. In fact, I'm just recalling one of the lines Piper says all of the time. We keep fighting to try and have a normal life, but it never happens. And normal life, that's humanlandia for me. I don't like that. So the fact that they're not able to achieve it when they're not able to achieve it, that's what I love about it. I want the magical elements. And so with that all being said, Personal Demons is it's a good book if you want to, for the first 5 chapters anyway, are a good read if you want to read a book that has a little bit of fantasy placed in there, because you have these two opposing team members. You have Team Evil with Luke, who works for the devil, and you have Team Good, which is Gabriel, who works for the Almighty. I think they call it the Almighty. And that's great. There's a fantastical element to this book. But when you take out him and you take out him, you're left with Humanlandia. And I don't like that. So I will say I'm not a fan of how human the book is, considering it is a fantasy book. Next thing, I will agree with my friend who did say, as I said in part 1, that the book can be too descriptive, especially in chapter 1, and I completely agree. Lisa DeRoche's, while she does have really amazing moments, and I absolutely have to say that because she does, Luke has these one-liners that just, I love them. I burst into laughter, or I'm so on side with Luke a lot of the time, and that's, I think, another reason why I want to see Luke's side of the story alone, as opposed to Luke and Franny's side of the story. Yeah, because if we can't, I'm just thinking, if we cut Franny's side of the story out, the only human aspect is dealing with Franny. Yeah, so, anyway, I'll keep going. Yeah, so too descriptive in chapter 1, and absolutely I agree that it was. It is an incredibly, yes, it bore repeating 3 times there, slow start. If you are a reader that is like me, that likes to jump right into the action, and I do. In one of my first fantasy books, where I had these, it was kind of based on the Charmed World, just with 3 new characters. I open up the very first scene with them fighting a demon. And if you've seen Charmed, you'll know what I mean. Paige's power, how she can call out to something and you know, have it orb to her. The very first word of the very first book in that series that I was writing is fireball, because they're in the midst of this demon attack. You're exposed to the world right away. You're exposed to what they do, who they are, what's going on. You're jumping right in. This book does not jump right in. This book is incredibly slow. As a matter of fact, you start off with Luke arriving at the school and talking about how he's now at this school for humans and he doesn't want to be here because, you know, he's done schooling that many times and So it's a very, very, very slow start. And in fact, it takes me until excuse me, a little bit of chapter 3, but mainly chapter 4 to really get into the book. And then in chapter 5, the first 3/4 of the book is all about, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound condescending, and this is probably young adult fiction. I didn't look into whether it was young adult fiction or not. I literally went off the cover, and the cover to me looks rather menacing, so I thought that it would not be young adult fiction. But 3/4 of chapter 5 is all about our feelings toward each other. And honestly, I don't like that. My friend was saying that she keeps trying to work out how old Franny is, because in one moment she thinks Franny is a senior in high school because she's talking about how she's going to get into UCLA. She talks about this quite a lot in chapter 5, how she's got a scholarship to UCLA. Again, it's human, I don't care, but it does make this point here. She's going to UCLA by the end of the year, which is a college, so it gives the idea that she's a senior in high school. But then 3/4 of chapter 5 is all about how we feel about each other. And I love him, but I love him too. And I don't know who to go with, because this one, he's really alluring, but his power scares me. And this one, he's great too, but is it too good? I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just not a fan of young adult fiction. And yes, granted, Twilight, to whatever degree, probably is a young adult fiction. Harry Potter, to whatever degree, probably is young adult fiction as well. They both talk about their feelings about love in their own way. But nowadays, I don't want to read that. It's just not me. If I did want to read that, I would be picking up a romance novel, and I do not own one single romance because I don't want to read about them. And that's not because I'm bitter with romance or whatever. Um, it, Romance is fine. It's just, it's not the type of genre that interests me. And if you are going to have two characters that get together, can we do a lot more showing? This is another thing I learned with the more I write and the more I'm learning from those who have written before me. Can we do a lot more showing rather than telling? Because we're literally having 3/4 of the chapter with Franny going, I don't know who I love, but I love them both, and da-da-da. You don't need that. You're already kind of showing this in the first 3 chapters with Franny feeling all the electricity. If I read that word electricity one more time, I'm sorry. Can someone recommend a book to me that is full on high fantasy next to no human landia and doesn't use the word electricity unless it's to do with some kind of a physical power that one of them has in that universe? Because electricity is written way too many times. Oh, I'm feeling the electric spark of him radiating through me. I don't care. I'm sorry. I don't care. I'm not here to read about who she loves. I'm here to read about 2 opposing sides that are supposedly meant to be battling to win her. And what I'm getting so far in the first 5 chapters is 1/4 of that, with Gabe not even introduced in the story until chapter 3. And the other 3/4 is about our emotions, how we're feeling, the fact that we are a high school student. I mean, I just don't like that. And again, I will go back to what I said earlier. If you cut Franny's perspective out of the story, I get that she's the main character. I do. But if you cut Franny's perspective out of the story, it would be a much better read for me. Quite frankly, if I knew which chapters had exactly the same story, because some of them do deviate. We have chapters where Franny's over here doing her thing, and we not only have her perspective but her storyline, while Luke is over here doing his thing, and then we have his perspective and his storyline. But when they are together and they're doing the same thing, but we need to get Franny's perspective and then Luke's perspective of the exact same thing, if I knew every chapter where they are together doing the exact same thing and we're just getting different perspectives, then I would just read the Luke side of it, and it would be an amazing read for me. The Franny read for me slows down the book and introduces way too many elements of human landia, and it is detracting me from the book. Now, I'm going to start wrapping this up now. I have about, well, today's Monday, so I have, including today, I have 7 days to read the next 5 chapters, and I really hope, we shall see, I really hope that I don't come here next week and say to you guys, guess what? Chapters 6 to 10 was all about love, because seriously, I'll be very, very, very disappointed. The one high note that I really have, and yes, I could talk about Luke and Gabe and the little side chats that they've been having all this time and how much I love that. But the one really big thing that Lisa DeRoches has going for her is that at the end of chapter 5, we have that moment, excuse me, we have that moment between Luke and the King Lucifer. That was amazing. It was 100% fantasy world, boss to his underling, and they're working together on what's going on and how they're moving forward. And King Lucifer, is trying to entice Lucifer to get her, because if he gets her, then he'll move up in his job and all this kind of stuff. I love that. Yes, jobs are part of Humanlandia, but it's jobs in a fantasy world. So to me, And you could argue that the whole thing's a fantasy world because it's a made-up book by Lisa Dorosha. But that aside, I still find human elements to be humanlandia genre. This is a fantasy world. You are literally in Lucifer's throne room. I mean, it'd be one thing if we were just in somewhere in hell, which you do have earlier on in the chapter when Luke, whose name is Lucifer, but anyway, Luke, who is going through his thoughts and feelings about Franny, he is in his room in hell, and there's a descriptive of how there's a bat flying past the window, and I'm loving the getting to know where he lives as opposed to his thoughts of Franny and how much he loves Franny. That I don't want to know about, and it's interesting because it's the portion of that chapter that goes through his thoughts about Franny is centered around his thoughts about Franny. But here I am really embracing the outside of what should be focused on, which is, there's a bat flying past his window. His room looks like this. Outside of the window past the bat, this is going on. Like, that's what I want to know. I don't want to know what's going on in Luke's head right then. I want to see everything else of this fantastical world. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. Okay, predictions moving forward. I do think, based off of the first 5 chapters, that Luke is going to win. Because it is a battle between Luke and Gabe after all, and I'm hoping this really does become the central plot, and that the central plot does not become, I'm Luke, I love Franny. I'm Gabe, I love Franny. I'm Franny and I love both of them. I really hope that's not the central plot because that would make it a romance book. Okay, so we do need to talk about my predictions so far with what I've read as to who I think will win, and I think Luke will win based on what I've seen so far. Granted, Gabe has not had enough of a chance because we're introduced to Gabe in chapter 3, but Gabe really isn't seen with her a lot. He's had a few conversations with her, and that's literally it. So, at the moment, to me, he's not even a factor. Yet Luke is worried about him because Luke has battled him before, and apparently he's a really strong angel, and da-da-da-da. And that's great. But she's not with Gabe enough. So maybe that will change in the next 5 chapters. Maybe she'll spend a lot more time with Gabe. But at the moment, and I don't want to read anymore, but I want to see if there's a section entitled Gabe. No, I'm seeing Franny, I'm seeing Luke, I'm seeing Franny, I'm seeing Luke, I'm seeing Franny, I'm seeing Franny, I'm seeing a lot of Franny, which doesn't encourage me. But anyway, I think she'll end up with Luke. And Luke will win, and I'm open to a plot twist where Luke wins and then he doesn't hand her over to King Lucifer, but instead they run away and have a happy life together. I'm open to that being a plot twist. But so far, overall, I'm disappointed, and I'm going to give this book a 5 out of 10. A lot of those points coming from, for the first 5 chapters, 5 out of 10, a lot of those points do come from Luke in that final scene with King Lucifer. And a few of those points come from Luke and Gabe and their side interactions. But otherwise, it's okay. If this book was not a buddy read book that I was doing with one of my best friends, I would have this as a DNF book. I did not finish. I would literally discard this right now, pick up the replacement and start reading it, because personally, I fear that it is going to become a romance novel, and I don't want that, okay? Romance is not meant to be the central plot to this. So that's my thought. But anyway, I'll be back next week with my review of chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But until then, I'm going to let all of you go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Whatever it is that you're reading, I hope that you are enjoying it. And if anything, I hope that my video has helped you to see that you can have your own opinion. It really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. You have the freedom to have your own opinion on what you think. You may take this book, a beloved series arguably by millions of people all over the world, and say, you know what, I actually don't like this. I don't like this book. I don't like the magical elements. I don't like the main character. I think this book sucks. I think you should feel free to have your own opinions. And don't read a book, excuse me, don't read a book that you don't love. Now, yes, I am going to continue reading this book because I made a promise to my friend that I am going to finish reading this book. So I will. Absolutely, I'm going to do that. And we're going to motivate each other to get through it. And she's already come up with our next book, which is amazing. And it sounds much better than this. So I might talk about that in another video. But anyway, if you don't enjoy something, it is perfectly okay to say, you know what, you're not working for me, and put it down and pick up another one. Okay? It's perfectly fine. You don't have to finish a book. I say this because I come from a place when I was younger where I felt that if I started a book, I had to finish it before I read another one. And this had a lot to do with growing up. This was, my mother would buy me books. I would also borrow books, but my mum would buy me books on the condition that I finished the last one that I read. And so I grew up believing that's what you had to do. If you start something, you have to finish it. Give it enough of an opportunity. I've only read 5 chapters. There are 23 in this book. Yes, I'm a bit of a harsh critic in that if this does not grab me in the first chapter or the first 2, I am going to let it go. But I will say to the average reader, give the book until halfway through because you never know what's going to grab you. But if it is torture to pick up a book because you are not enjoying the book, please don't continue reading it because readers, and I say us because I am one, readers have lost so many of our fellow readers owing to the fact that these former readers thought that they had to get through a book that they didn't like. And I just want to make a point very quickly too about school. Because I have a friend and her child is about to go off to high school here in Australia and he needs to read these 2 books. He's not a massive fan of reading, but he does like reading books that interest him. I will say this for him, but I will also say it for me because it was the same with me. When I went to high school, I got to a point in high school where I traded in English for English lit. I loved English so much, and everything to do with English, that lit focuses on the literature. So I absolutely wanted to do English lit. But the books that they made us read, and that is the point, that they made us read, I did not like them. I think that if you are going to set students this homework assignment to read a book, that they should read a book that, yes, falls in line with what you need them to do thanks to the curriculum that you're trying to teach them. Yes, I agree to that. But that they should pick a book that falls into that category. That's what I would say. Even to new students coming in, he's going into his first year of high school, I would have said, for English, you're going to need to read 2 novels. Excuse me. Both novels have to be more than 200 pages and contain this, whatever it is. Go out and get yourself those books. You choose which ones you want to read, because guaranteed, if they choose the book they want to read and this book is interesting enough, it will change their lives and it will change the way that they view reading. But if you are going to give them books, I don't have any of those books that I didn't like because I didn't hang on to them, but I was given Night, I was given Apocalypse Now, which, oh my gosh, was a terrible book to read. Because it was just, it was so gloomy and like, the world has come to an end. And no, I don't agree with that. Again, all the opinions stated in any of my videos are my own, and you can read into that what you want. And if you want to sound off with your own comments, please do so below. I'm open to all comments, thoughts, questions, suggestions. Absolutely, I am. But this is just my opinion. I think that it's high time that we got everyone back into reading. J.K. Rowling has done an amazing job with getting children back onto reading, even adults back onto reading, by writing this amazing series called Harry Potter. But I think if you want children to get back into reading, yes, set a requirement at school that children need to read. I completely agree with that. I think it's an amazing idea. Keep reading going, but give them the opportunity to select the books that they're going to read within certain requirements, yes, certain requirements included, yes, but give them the opportunity to choose their own book, okay, their own books, because guaranteed you will be bowled over by the choices they make of the books that they want to read, and you'll be bowled over by whatever assignment or project you've given them to do because of this book, because they love the book as opposed to them hating it. My assignment for a Apocalypse Now, I'm trying not to confuse it with Acropolis Now, that Effie thing that I never saw, but anyway, Apocalypse Now was so dry because I hated, and I don't like using the word hate, but I hated that book. It was not the book for me. That's not saying I wouldn't recommend it to others. If you like war-torn, out in the country, I'm feeling depressed right now books, great, please read this book, you're going to love it. But for me, it was so dry that my assignment was so dry as well. Where if I was given Harry Potter to read, or if I was given the choice to choose a book that I wanted to read, and I got to go out and find something that, had some kind of an interest, something that was really enticing me to read this book, guaranteed my assignment would be much better. So anyway, that's just my recommendation for teachers out there or anyone that has any authority with the school board and all that kind of stuff. Guys, let the kids choose the books they want to read, because it's going to be a much better experience for them, which is also going to be a much better experience for you, and it will have a much higher chance of the child walking away from those books wanting to read more than giving them a book that they have no interest in and it's so dry and they can't wait to finish it so they don't have to ever read again. That's just my opinion. All right, enough of that, enough of my opinion. Let's leave that there. Okay, letting you guys go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. And I will see you next week with chapters 6 to 10. Mwah. Happy reading. Bye.